We got Jim Jones versus Nas. I don't know how this started. Do you know?
Jim Jones and Nas do have a beef, and it's been stemming for close to 20 years now.
Is it a beef?
They have a problem.
You have an issue, yeah?
They have an issue. If you hear the song Summer in Miami, he explains it. He talks about it was 04, at Summer Jam with 04. I was on the stage on my set. Something about meeting, I think, which alluding to Khalees.
Okay.
And I think he was chatting up Khalees, and then Nas was hating on it or whatever. And he's like, yo, tell Nas to smack off his kufi. And he says it in the song.
Got it.
So I think it's stemming from that, and it never stopped.
It never
stopped.
Yeah, there was no conversation after that.
But Nas is like sort of like so like bigger than him. He's like not acknowledging Jim Jones, and Jim Jones is the type of guy, if you don't acknowledge him, he goes nuts. So I think what he was looking for the last 20 years was acknowledgement. But Jim Jones is like, Nas is like, you're Jim Jones. I'm not gonna acknowledge you. Even though I love Jim Jones.
So you mean to tell me Jim Jones is not a bigger name than Nas?
No, not in this.
No?
Not in this world.
You're a hater, yo.
Not in this world. But I love Jim Jones. I love Jim Jones' music, and I love his progression over the years. But I'm sorry, he's nothing like an Nas.
All right. Let's hear what Jim Jones has to say here in this viral clip that was on Backfield.
For Nas, probably never been done for him in his life. He's never been that viral at all, ever. Ever. He's never been talked about like this ever in his life.
Now, has Nas reached out to you?
You did. The last time he was in some shit like this where people were comparing when him and Jay was beating on him.
Say that.
You heard? You did? Like, and I don't want to talk about other people's career, but let's just get to the semantics of it.
Have you spoken to Nas since the whole thing?
Nas.
Okay.
I don't know Nas to have a conversation with him. You want to have a conversation, we can have that too and shit like that. You dig? Like, I don't really care.
One thing I did see you do.
I think the mistake Jim Jones is making here is that he's overinflating his value.
Which is okay. You need to do it in this type of world.
Yeah, but it could come off cringy, almost embarrassing. I mean, Nas is one of the biggest legacy acts in hip hop, period. When you talk about top 5 rappers, Nas is always in the top 5. It's Biggie, Jay-Z, or Nas. And then it's interchangeable with, Tupac and Eminem. But Nas is always there.
Where's Jim Jones on your list?
Jim Jones would be lucky to make 30. Would be lucky
I
to
put him
make
in the
top
top 50.
Yeah, he could go in top 50. And so for there to even be a conversation that we're entertaining is so ridiculous. And then Jim Jones talking about, going viral. Who cares? Anybody could go viral. Lady SB went viral. Viral doesn't equate to value.
Well, I mean, this day and age, people do equate that to value because what's going to happen is he'll get a bunch of clicks on his Spotify and his iTunes page or whatever Apple page or whatever. You can tell I don't have an Apple product, but for the streaming up platforms, his streamings will go up and hence more money.
Maybe in some cases, but I think just going viral, like we could go viral too. We could come up with something that makes us go viral, but does not necessarily add value to us. Yes, maybe for 72 hours, 48 hours, people lock in and see what these guys are doing depending on what we're going viral for. But ultimately, in the grand scheme of things, it means absolutely nothing.
But do you know where this stemmed from as well? Not just the Nas and Jim Jones talking to Khalees. This stemmed from a kid who's like in his 20s, was viral on Black Twitter saying, "Yo, Jim Jones is more influential than Nas."
Yeah,
and that's how the question was prompted.
Okay, yeah,
to him at the SO show.
Yeah,
or whatever they're called. What's the show called again?
Backfield. Salute to those guys.
So. That's how it was positioned. So a younger kid was like, "Is Nas really relevant?" So that's the question the kids are asking now.
Yeah,
is Nas relevant? Which is understandable because if you look back in history, Nas and Jim Jones are like two different boats. Like Nas comes out once in a while, and when it does come out, the old heads are gravitating towards it. Whereas in the last 20 years, you would see Jim Jones with all the youngins.
So it depends how you measure relevancy, right? So when, a young person asks, is Nas relevant? How do you measure relevancy? Because to the hip hop culture, Nas is very relevant, and he's relevant to guys who care about rapping and MCing.
Dare I say it? There's some pockets of the culture where Nas is not relevant.
No, that's absolutely true.
Right.
Absolutely, there will always be the pockets, the segment of the culture that don't care for Nas.
Right.
But when we talk about hip hop and the history of hip hop, the how hip hop became to be, you have to mention Nas. Right. And then when you have new lyricists come into the game, who are some of the top names that they mention in terms of being an influence on them?
Yeah, you're right. Some people would say, like the lyricists would say, lyricists of today, you typically guys are over 35.
Yeah.
Would say Nas.
Exactly.
But again, there's pockets of kids who are coming out now who their lyricist is J. Cole.
Which goes back to my original question. How do you measure relevancy? Right. And I guess it depends on who you're asking.
Age, it's subjective.
Right. So Nas may not be relevant to, say, someone under the 20s, but to someone who's over 25 years old and into lyricism and punchlines and flow and storytelling, he's very relevant. But let's not pretend like Nas' name doesn't ring bells. And Nas has had a crazy run in the last 6 years. With the King's Disease, he was nominated for a Grammy 3 years ago.
He has.
In terms of artists over 50 still doing it and making noise, Nas is there. He's definitely there. Now, on the flip side Jim Jones. What impact or influence has he had on anything within the culture? And this is not even for you per se. This is for anyone.
Look, he's been very consistent with the mixtapes over the last 10 years. Mm-hmm. Every 2 years dropping a mixtape. And he's been very consistent with his clothing line, Vampire Life. And all of it, and majority of it was his online persona, which is something you need nowadays as a rapper, as an artist, as a content creator. You need to be creating content as a rapper nowadays.
I'll give Jim Jones
goes hand in hand.
I'll give Jim Jones credit for being able to grow with the times and stay relevant. I guess to what's the demographic you think he's relevant to? The YNs.
The older YNs.
The older YNs?
Yeah.
Hold on. The YNs over 40?
No, the YNs over 25. From over 25 to 30.
But is it his music or is it his persona or is it his fashion?
It's all of it. It's all of the above. I think Jim Jones is now regarded like the Dapper John.
Dapper Dan.
Dapper Dan, rather.
Yeah, that's cool.
I knew I was wrong.
Yeah.
Dapper Dan of hip hop today. I think that's what he's regarded as.
Cool. So musically, there is no comparison. Would you agree with that?
Again, like I said, there could be arguments.
We're eliminating here. Like, I'm asking your personal opinion. I'm not.
Oh, my personal opinion?
Yeah,
musically?
Yeah. Musically.
So if Nas is a 10, Jim Jones to me is like a 6.
That's high. That's high for Jim Jones.
Yeah, because Jim Jones does have classic music, like classic songs that you will. And
I'm gonna put you on the spot. Name 3.
Okay. I'm gonna name Summer Miami.
That's not a classic.
That Summer Miami is a classic. Guys, please tell this guy, please.
Okay.
Please, guys, come on.
Okay.
Come on.
I should say name 3 classic songs outside of Ballin'.
Yeah, Summer Miami, Honey Dip, and Certified Gangsters.
Okay. So those are the 3 classic songs by Jim Jones. So you guys let me know if you agree if they are classics. Definitely hits, but are they classics? So musically, there is no comparison. Like, just absolutely none. From pen game to catalog to songs that are culturally relevant. Like, they're
culturally relevant. I'll argue with you there.
What's the argument?
The balling and Jim Jones is himself. He himself is culturally relevant.
Yeah.
So I think the balling song is another culturally relevant song. I mean, come on, name me a song that you could play in a club with it from Nas.
Uchiwali. Uchiwali. You asked me to name a song. I gave you one.
Okay, name. Give me. Put me on the spot like how you did. Name 3 ones. 3 club songs from Nas.
3. If I Ruled the World.
That's a club song? That's not a club song.
What do you mean?
That's not a club song.
You can't play I Ruled the World if I Ruled the World in the club?
I'm leaving that club if somebody plays that song.
Okay. If you're at a 90s party, you could definitely play that. You could definitely play that. Uchiwali. And I've also heard Get Yourself a Gun.
So I'm gonna give you an olive branch. What's one? You Can Hate Me Now, but I won't stop now. That's a big track. Okay. And You Owe Me.
Yeah. But I don't want the club to be the standard here. Like the club shouldn't be the standard.
But this is the cultural relevancy.
Yeah, but the relevancy could be measured in other ways outside of the club, right? We're just talking about sheer impact on the culture. His
first album, Illmatic. Does Jim Jones have an Illmatic? No, he doesn't have an Illmatic. Absolutely not.
No.
Okay, but is
Jim Jones doesn't have It Was Written? He doesn't even have that.
No, he doesn't have it either.
He doesn't even have a Stillmatic. He doesn't even have a Godson.
Stop it.
He doesn't even have a King's Disease. He doesn't have a King's Disease 1, 2, or 3. Musically, it's like there's no comparison. Like we could like thread the needles and pull out the olive branches and do all of this freaking well. But it's such a redundant conversation in my opinion. It's not even close. But now, if you want to talk about Jim Jones, as a businessman and branding and transitioning with the times and being an online personality,
does that intertwine with cultural relevancy though?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why I'm mentioning it. I'm saying musically, there's no comparison. So let's move on from the music. That's what I'm saying. And if Nas was more of a presence on social media, because he's very quiet, period.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? If he was more tapped in on the social media and just kind of, willing to connect with the people, say like what 50 Cent does, it'd be a different conversation. But Nas just pretty much just makes music, does his business, does his family thing, and just shuts the hell up. So obviously Jim Jones being out there, always uploading, showing his fitness stuff and his fashion and all of that, he's going to have, more of a presence online.
I'll tell you one thing though.
But from what I'm hearing, Nas is making some crazy major moves behind the scenes. I've heard that too. Like he's doing some amazing things.
I'll tell you one thing though. I've been watching Khalees recently online, and he done fumbled the bot.
No, he didn't.
She's crazy.
No. Yeah, she's probably. But you know what? She's a beautiful girl. But let's not forget, Nas is still Nas. He could still pull a baddie. Let's not get it twisted, So yeah, don't get me wrong. Khalees is a beautiful woman, but she's not the only beautiful woman out there. So yeah. The Jim Jones Nas debate is interesting. Give us your opinion. Let us know what you think. And when we have this conversation, let's try to be more detailed about what we're talking about in terms of relevancy, impact, music, stuff like that. We could get into the weeds a little bit. Personally, obviously, musically, in my opinion, Jim Jones doesn't, come close. But someone would be like, well, Jim Jones has music that plays in the club and stuff like that. And it's like, okay, cool. But I've never heard anyone say, yo, Jim Jones has, inspired me musically. I haven't heard that. I've heard they say they like songs.
You'll be hearing that soon.
I can't wait to hear it.
I'm not going to lie. Jim Jones does influence me musically as well. He influenced me musically.
In what sense?
I love the Dipset music. I love his
music. See. Dipset is different now. We're talking about Jim Jones. Jim Jones as the artist. If you're saying Dipset, you're not going to hear any pushback from me on that. But Jim Jones isn't Dipset. Jim Jones is Jim Jones. Jim Jones, Jules Santana, Cameron, Freaky Zeke, that's Dipset. So the Dipset movement would probably even be more credited to Cameron and Jules over Jim Jones, if we're being honest.
Well, that's different. We're going to sit here and argue all day about that.
So, yeah. All right.